This video is brought to you by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creative people where millions get to explore together. Skillshare's got thousands of classes. As artists, you're going to love discovering topics in fine art, illustration, and more. Lots of Skillshare classes are under 60 minutes. With short lessons, you can fit them into the busiest of schedules. Our goal at Art Prof is to provide free art education in an accessible way, and I have started to see that branding is a skill that I definitely need to dig into much more. I decided to watch Strategic Design, the art and science of branding. The content in this class gave me the tools that I need to create a cohesive branding strategy and emphasize the many concrete ways that I could launch that strategy into the world to generate enthusiasm with our audience. Skillshare is also super affordable, and annual subscription is less than $10 a month. The first 1,000 people to click the link in our YouTube video description below will get a free trial of Skillshare Premium. Hello, everybody. Today, we are going to be painting eyes using acrylic and watercolor. If you would like to grow as an artist and you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof: critiques, tutorials, and professional development. Let's get started, Alex. I believe that you have already gotten in your pencil sketch, and you're going to start with the acrylic.
Yeah, and you're using watercolor today, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the reason I did the sketch already is because I feel like I'm a slow sketcher. I just kind of noodle. So now you guys get more bang for your buck as far as time seeing this work.
But you know what's funny, though, Alex, is I don't sketch with pencil ever for watercolor.
Really? You just sketch with watercolor?
I just make the watercolor like really, really light, and then I just paint over it.
That's how I do like outdoor or live watercolor painting. I guess it's all live, but from a model, I would do it just
dead
like
watercolor
that.
Painting.
Yeah. There we go.
I don't know. I just feel like I'm losing the painterliness if I start with a pencil, because I feel like it's too different. Like I don't like making the transition.
I totally understand that, because I think that why I like to use the pencil is I like those drawing marks in it. Like I kind of like how watercolor for me is in between painting and drawing.
Whereas really? Like, you think about it that way?
I think so. And for acrylic, I view it as like just painting.
Oh, so you think about acrylic as full painting?
Yeah, I guess so. Whereas like watercolor, I view as painting light in my head.
I don't know. I mean, I guess for me, watercolor is fairly similar to ink wash. So in that sense, I do think about it in terms of drawing. But when it comes to like those direct marks that I eventually put in, I feel like that is very painterly.
Hmm. Well, it's almost, I'm thinking of your guy, Sargent. They had an exhibit.
My guy?
Yeah, your guy.
Like he dated or something.
Yeah, your guy Sargent, who was, he had a watercolor exhibit in Boston several years ago, but it was an exhibit of his watercolor paintings. And seeing it, it's like, oh, wow, so much makes sense.
Alex, can we just like not talk about John Singer Sargent? He makes me feel bad about myself.
Actually, understandable. We won't bring up artists like that while we're painting.
And please, let's not talk about Winslow Homer either, please.
Nope. I was just gonna actually, the last artist I'll bring up, but illustration-wise, this eye we're using as reference is very Brett Helmquist Lemony Snicket. So I'm excited that we're going with it.
See, I'm okay with that. I don't idolize. Well, I mean, he's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with Brett Helmquist, but he's just he's not my guy.
Somewhere Brett Helmquist is watching this stream and a single tear rolls down his face. No, I get that. I feel like illustrators, by and large, are the approachable artist, you know? Like John Singer Sargent, you get the sense that he could walk on water almost. Whereas illustrators are like,
artists like that.
Yeah. Illustrators are more like, yeah, I'm just a normal dude.
By the way, if you guys would like to paint or draw along with us, use any media you want, and we would love to hang out with all of you in the Art Prof Discord. We will be in the Art Alongs channel, and we'd love for you guys to upload whatever you end up painting there. And remember, if you want to use the same reference photos that Alex and I are using, the links to those are in the YouTube video description, as are the art supply links for the acrylic and also the watercolor supplies.
It's the coolest part of these streams too, is seeing what everybody comes up with and seeing what all you guys make in all different mediums and such. So yeah, please follow along, share along. It's a good like open sharing community if you all haven't participated already.
Oh, I just love it, Alex, when it's just this like stream of images that just flood into the Discord. It's like so satisfying.
Yeah. And if you have that like crit anxiety, there's like none of that. It's just pure like positivity. It's just like, look what we made. It's fun. That's it.
Well, so Alex, on Saturday, I did a stream about the pros and cons of teaching online. And, you know, other than not having to grade anybody ever and a couple other things, it's really nice because people can participate and not feel singled out. And I feel like that's much harder to do in person.
Oh, yeah.
Because if you are, let's say, hanging out with us in the chat post-stream and you're a few minutes late, like nobody cares. It's like totally fine.
Mm-hmm. I had an experience like that, even like when I took like a supplemental psychology class before. This was in 2019. I was a decade older than everyone else in the room, and I still felt nervous, like raising my hand and showing my work on the board and things like that. Yeah. It's a real thing.
It's funny how that never really goes away, no matter how old you are.
Which is in a way very soothing. It's like like stage fright doesn't go away. You just learn ways to deal with it.
Sort of like imposter syndrome as an artist, it never really goes away. We have a question for you, Alex. Meisuko is asking, do you, Alex, like the Birds of America painter? I'm going to assume you mean, as Dara says, John James Audubon.
Yeah, like so it's just such a perfect example of knowing exactly your goal and executing it perfectly. Like knew that they wanted like scientific based images and illustrations that were still soothing and visually appealing, and nailed it. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's it. I really enjoy artists and painters that achieve the goal they set out to do. I know that sounds very broad and vague, but yeah, like whether it's highbrow or lowbrow art, it's like, awesome. You did it. You did the thing.
You know, something, you make it sound so simple, Alex, but it's really hard to stick to your guns. I feel like as an artist, there's a lot of like, I think the grass is greener on the other side.
Oh, it typically is, but that's because of the reflective light. That was an art joke.
We have a question here from Kasam, who says, Alex, why did you start with blue?
Ooh. So this is, it's a trick that I talk about in our acrylic painting tutorial. But for acrylics, I like to use a thin, like a thinning medium for the paint on the future layers. So I like to do the underpainting in the complementary color of what will be on the surface. So I'm starting with like a bluish green underneath, so that when I come to do the warm skin tones, those will really pop. Likewise, when I do the cool blues of the eye, the pink that I've just painted underneath will still be able like shining through.
That's so funny, Alex. I thought that you only did that for still life. I didn't realize that you did that also with human figure.
Honestly, it's the human figure is what I started doing it with first.
Yeah?
And because it was really funny doing it that I did it, and then somebody commented that it had the appearance of like, so blood, when it's still in our veins under our skin, is blue. So by having it there, it kind of has this, it does almost make sense in a weird way. Not just
so you're painting blood?
Yeah, I'm painting blood right now. That's all. Yeah,
I didn't know it was that straightforward, Alex.
No, wait, you're not painting the Incredible Hulk?
No, I'm
that's
not.
what we're all doing.
I'm boring. Here you are with like, I'm painting underneath the surface. I'm like, I'm using burnt sienna. It feels so boring.
Yay, burnt sienna. Let's see here. There we go.
So yeah. Anna says in the chat, I find the Discord so confusing. There is just so much going on. What I would recommend, if you guys are not in the Discord, or maybe you are and you're feeling overwhelmed, I recommend watching our Discord video. It's one that me and Deepti and Bowser's did. And it's a nice stream because we walk you through some of the more hidden features of the Discord, but also just how to start, because it is a lot of channels and a lot to take in all at once. But you don't need to do that. I mean, you can start just hanging out in 1 or 2 channels, get used to that, and then maybe start to expand, because that is one of the challenges, is because we do want to offer a lot of content. Getting it organized can be challenging for people who are new and not used to Discord.
I can definitely speak for that, because I'd never used Discord at all until we started using it with Art Prof. And ironically, now I'm using a bunch of other Discord channels.
Oh, you are? For what?
Oh, Animal Crossing and D&D. Yeah. No, there's a great, very wholesome Animal Crossing Discord channel.
Okay, please explain, Alex, why do you need to be on Discord for Animal Crossing? Why?
Oh, because if you know, you know, every island, sometimes Nook's shopping has only certain types of furniture. And so it's really handy to talk to people all over the world and be like, hey, I'm looking for another coffee table to make my living room look nice. Does anyone have an extra one? And then you can trade.
Oh my God.
It's very
okay.
It's so sweet.
Who here knows what Alex is talking about? I don't. I mean, I've watched my kids play Animal Crossing, but that's it. Like, I don't really get it.
My poor islanders, though, I haven't visited in months.
Aww.
Yeah, they were there for me very well at the beginning of the pandemic. And now that, you know, I'm getting 2 feet on the ground again, I'm like, oh, gee, I hope Fauna's okay.
You're such a neglectful video game player, Alex. I'm so disappointed. So in case any of you are wondering, what I'm doing right now is I start with very much like a drawing approach. So in the beginning, you'll notice I did all this line work, but also my grip is very, very tight. So I can like really control the lines. And I don't know about you, Alex, but to me, half the battle with watercolor is like controlling how dry or wet your brush is. So what I try to do is to stay very dry in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. That's a very good way to put it. It's not how wet the palette is, or sometimes it's how wet the paper is, but the brush is the absolute key. That's that number one thing controlling how much pigment gets onto the page.
Well, and the thing is, like, I never understood how helpful dry brushing was, because I was always thinking, oh, watercolor, flow, woo. And I just never occurred to me that maybe drier, more brittle strokes would help me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the versatility of it is so... I think that's surprising. That was certainly surprising to me when I first started with watercolor, because I thought that it could only be used one way, which was the way I was using it. And then suddenly it's like, whoa, it has this whole range that's often not talked or thought about.
Tell me in the chat, what do all of you associate when you think about watercolor? Because I think that's a great point, Alex, that there's sort of what people expect watercolor to be, and then there's this whole world that you have to really take initiative to discover on your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good question for it. I think for me, I always think of the wet side of watercolor. Even though I frequently use watercolor and I know that that's not the end of it, when I picture, like if I was to do a lineup of someone saying, show me an example of the proverbial watercolor painting, it would be like a very wetly applied, probably an ocean landscape with a lighthouse.
Why is it an ocean landscape? I need to know.
I think I'm just thinking like little touristy art shops in like ocean towns in the East Coast. And for some reason that's watercolor to me.
Well, I guess I'm just not watercolor, because I was painting like graveyard scenes in Utah with watercolor.
Oh, boo. Yeah, no, that's like the antithesis. There we go.
Does that mean I'm a rebel?
Yeah, you're punk rock watercolor.
Ah, yeah. Oh, I want to be that so bad.
All right. Oh. I'm going to duck out for just a moment. I realized I don't have any paper towels.
Alex, got to plan in advance. Adrian says, I associate watercolor with gentle still lifes of teapots and landscape paintings. That picture you showed of that really textural and harsh watercolor painting was unexpected for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the one I forgot. Teacups especially. That's definitely a watercolor thing. Like a still life with a shiny teacup or a tea kettle. Yep.
It's always shiny. Like nobody ever has matte ones. You ever notice this?
Oh, yeah. What's really surreal, there was a good friend of mine from school who was cleaning out her studio, and she was posting some of the old work on Instagram, and it was surreal seeing pieces that I remember them painting in real life. Be like, oh, wow, I remember painting that kettle right next to you. Like,
that's so weird.
Mm-hmm. It's a strange feeling.
Well, so what I also like to know from everybody, what's your stereotypical expectation of acrylic? Because I think that every media gets stereotyped. Is that what it is? Like we're talking about stereotypes of paint media?
Oh, I absolutely think that's true.
Alex, I feel like you're painting the people from that terrible James Cameron movie Avatar.
As of now, yeah, absolutely. That's why I was like, yeah, I gotta get some flesh tones in here real quick.
I gotta try that sometime, Alex. Your technique. I've never done that before Actually, I've never done it before, so maybe I should just try it.
I can say it doesn't work the best with watercolor.
Oh, really?
Like, I'm not saying it doesn't work with watercolor. It just, you got to be really thin at the start and really thick by the end.
Okay, so you have to really control your thicknesses?
Yeah, you have to be very intentional with it from the start. But it can be really rewarding.
I feel like I would feel better doing it with something that I could paint over with, like acrylic.
Mm-hmm. I absolutely, like, you can see now with this first layer of like the quote unquote real color, you can still see a little of the blue underneath it. So yeah, it definitely works really well with acrylic.
We have a question here from Marley who says, are color names specific to that color? Is burnt sienna always the same shade? About, I would say, of course, it fluctuates between paint types and manufacturers. Even it can be very different, but I would say that's about average. Would you say that, Alex?
I would say, like, yes, asterisks. Asterisks.
That's such an annoying answer, Alex.
Well, yeah, because I think you're absolutely right that it's overall the same. But I say so, like, basically when I was first diving into acrylic, I started by getting the palette that I use for watercolor. I was like, oh, great, they have Payne's Gray. Perfect, I'll use that. And it acts completely differently for acrylic than it does for watercolor. So there are some colors where it's like, yep, good old alizarin crimson. It's the same no matter what you're using. But then there are other colors that can be a little finicky as you change mediums.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Vash the Stampede says, the stereotype I'm familiar with acrylic is flat pictures, not much depth like oils, but I know it's not true.
Yeah. I think my stereotype of acrylic is bad high school self-portraits. I say this because I made bad high school self-portraits with acrylic when I was
we all did it.
Yeah, that's what I said. I'm not being disparaging to anyone but myself. Like,
although, okay, you guys, confession time. Who here has drawn pages and pages of hyper-realistic eyes in pencil? Like, I feel like that's a requirement if you're going to be an artist. In high school, you have to do that at some point.
oh yeah, and you got to pair them with like a My Chemical Romance quote. Absolutely.
Wait, what's the quote?
Oh, just any like rock or emo song lyric, then an I. Boop. There we go. That's how you got to do it.
So, Alex, occasionally I Google myself just to see what people are writing. And I always see people reposting my stuff, and whatever, that's fine. I mean, I can't really control that. But for some reason, people always have to put the words of a poem over my artwork. Like, why?
Nice.
Why can't the poem be next to the artwork? Why does it have to be layered on top? Well, how does that improve the situation?
Well, it makes it more deep.
I guess so. Maybe I should start doing that.
What's funny, whenever I Google myself, there's a cartoon character named Alex Rowe.
Wait, there it is?
Yeah. And I don't know a lot about him because I haven't seen the show he's in, but apparently he's in an anime and he's like a sky pirate captain. So it's kind of okay. I'm okay with it.
Wait, who designed Alex Rowe?
I don't know. Not this Alex Rowe. Yeah, there's Alex Rowe, the anime sky pirate, and then there's Alex Rowe, who's a fairly famous member of the Canadian Army.
What?
Yeah, so I have a lot to live up to.
All right, so who here has Googled themselves and discovered their other identity? Because there is not another Clara Lieu. I'm it.
That's kind of awesome.
Well, it's awesome from like buying a domain name point of view because I've never had to worry about that. And same thing with like Instagram or Twitter handles. It's just not an issue for me.
You know what? Actually, that reminded me. I have to check in with this chat on Instagram It made my day when it happened. Someone named Alex Rowe messaged me and like 15 other Alex Rows on Instagram. None of us know each other. And the first person message just said, all right, there can only be one, guys. And it's just been a goofy thread of a bunch of people named Alex Rowe occasionally talking.
Wait, are you still in this?
I'm still in it. The chat's like, it goes months at a time without anyone saying anything. And then every once in a while, someone will be like, how's it going, Alex? It's pretty wonderful. I didn't realize, I think Alex Rowe is just one of those like uncommon common names where we're all just enjoying the fact that there are others.
Oh, Alex, we've got some My Chemical Romance lyrics from you, from Slutneer. If I could be with you tonight, I would sing you to sleep. Never let them take the light behind your eyes.
Exactly. You write that in bad cursive underneath a hyper-realistic eye you drew. Oh, yeah. That's going to get first prize in the end of semester art show.
God, how could people take themselves seriously?
I mean, I don't think at a certain point, I don't think they do. Which I think is why they're wonderful.
I don't know, Alex. I think some people do.
Well, it's like, I think My Chemical Romance takes their craft very seriously, which is why they make such amazing music. But I think as far as their band identity goes, they're realizing, too, the theatrics of it.
Well, because, I'm sorry, if you guys like BTS, I'm sorry about what I'm about to say, but I'd never watched BTS before. I was like, okay, I know that they're this boy band, but I forget what I was watching. I think I was like flipping around YouTube or something, and I saw some performance that they were doing on like The Late Show or something. And I was like, you guys are really into this, aren't you? Like, they were really into it. I was like, you really believe in this, don't you?
Oh, you've got to.
I guess how else do you survive, right?
You've got to sell it.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess if I was a cute Korean boy band member, I guess I would live it up, wouldn't you?
100%. You've got to know that's a nothing gold can stay territory. You know, like if you find yourself in the Backstreet Boys, you know you only have a couple years.
I just wake up, woo, I'm in the Backstreet Boys.
Yeah, all of a sudden.
All right, now everybody has to tell us, you're going to reveal your age. What boy band was big when you were in high school? For me, it was New Kids on the Block. What about you?
Yeah. For me, it was Backstreet and NSYNC. That kind of... You can learn a lot about people by which one was their favorite. I don't know what you learned, but you learned something.
You're saying between NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, which is your preference?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the only thing I even surprised myself that I don't know a lot about either of those bands. I feel like
that's the thing is, okay, so when I was working at the summer camp, the girls in my dorm were really obsessed with Backstreet Boys. And so I heard a lot of Backstreet Boys music just all the time. So I'm just like used to hearing it. See, NSYNC, I never really listened to a lot of their music. So I don't feel like I know their music that well.
Mm-hmm. Who wrote the song, like, I don't care who you are, where you're from, as long as you love me? Was that Backstreet or NSYNC?
Backstreet, yeah.
Okay.
As long as you love me.
Now, which one had Justin Timberlake? Was that?
That's NSYNC.
Got it. Okay, that's the key thing I always mix up.
Alex, I cannot believe you don't know more about this topic.
It's really, yeah, I feel like when I think of my other music knowledge and taste, I'm like, wow, why am I not a big Backstreet and NSYNC fan? Like, it doesn't really check out.
There's a lot of reasons I can think of. Wow, we have a lot of different bands in here. Starving Artist says Bay City Rollers. I confess I don't know what that group is. And painting Plant Lady says Backstreet Boys. So does Emily. So does Seven Angelic. Yuri World as well. And we got Spice Girls. You know what? I missed the Spice Girls thing. You know why? Because I was in college, but I was living abroad in Rome. So that 1 year when they were like crazy hot, I missed the whole thing.
Okay, this is a complete shot in the dark, but I otherwise would have guessed that the Spice Girls were bigger in Rome than they were in the United States. It just seems like a thing that would have happened. Like,
maybe they were. I don't know.
Congrats on whoever made that answer, though, because yeah, I do think Spice Girls would be my favorite boy band.
Now, here's the real question, Alex. If you were in the Spice Girls, which Spice Girl would you be? That's what I want to know about you.
Probably, without knowing anything too much about the members of the Spice Girls, probably the blonde one.
You would be Baby Spice?
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm really glad that I didn't know more about them because, yeah, I think I would be Baby Spice then. What were their titles? What were their spices in regards to their hair? How did they decide that?
I don't know, but there was like Scary Spice, Sporty Spice, Posh Spice, Baby Spice. I feel like I'm forgetting one, but anyway.
Okay, you see, if I knew, then I would have said I'd want to be Scary Spice because I think that would be cooler. But I think that in not knowing, I revealed the truth that I am Baby Spice.
You're not Scary Spice. I'm Scary Spice.
Yeah, you're Scary Spice. I would have wanted to be Scary Spice because I think it would be cool. And you're just genuinely Scary Spice. There we go.
So, Alex, I got a painting question for you.
Yeah.
I always feel bad that I put down my darks this early in the process because, like, I really, really like value. That's why I'm a monochromatic artist mostly. But, like, is this bad? Like, should I not be doing that?
No, bad joke warning, but like art is more of an art than a science.
Really?
Like if it works for you, it works for you. And I think what you're doing is you're not just doing the darks first, you're helping to map out your value structure. So I think if that's a way that you're working and working well, then yeah, more power to you and go for it.
Well, I mean, I don't know that it's working well. I just feel this reliance on getting the value in early because I feel very muddled if I wait too long.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of how when I was talking, like I did the underpainting in the opposite color to kind of get a head start on that, the color palette. Mm-hmm. In a funny way, we're actually working the exact opposite because now I'm kind of feeling around, kind of identifying where I want the value structure to be and end up.
Mm-hmm. What I really need is my blow dryer because it's too wet right now for me to do a bunch of things. But I don't know where it is actually. I don't know where anything is, Alex. You know, like I planned to stream the other day to do graphite powder and I could not find my graphite powder. Like I turned my house upside down. I could not find it.
I feel you. I lost my bike helmet this morning. Do you know how hard it is to lose a bike helmet? They're pretty big. Those things always get me irrationally frustrated at myself. Where I'm like, okay, it's a small space. There are only so many surfaces it could be. Nope, not there. Oh, we're going to get some purple in here.
I'm going to give a shout out to Ron Nook. Thank you so much for the super sticker. Everybody, we so much appreciate your support because your support is what makes it possible for us to not have a paywall and make sure that our content stays 100% free all the time. So any contribution you can make, whether it's a super sticker or becoming a monthly pledge, on Patreon is enormously helpful. Maria says, convenience paint colors, do you like to have them? And if yes, is it always the same ones, or it depends on the theme of the paintings?
Let's see. By convenience paint colors, are you talking like kind of a, let's say, straight from the tube kind of thing? I really like Venetian red. I think that's one where more often than not, I do actually use it straight from the tube just as is.
I feel like my convenience is probably burnt sienna, because I do so much figure work, and burnt sienna it's in everything. No matter what type of person you're painting, you're gonna find burnt sienna. So it's sort of like my comfort food.
Mm-hmm. I totally get that.
Although, Alex, me and Prussian blue, I don't know. We had a couple.
We go way back.
No, we just. I wanted to like Prussian blue really bad, but just I don't know. There's something about
Prussian blue is that color that like you invited out for lunch and you always end up talking about Prussian blue. You know? That's Prussian blue.
You know something? I can see that.
Yeah.
Like burnt sienna just listens to me. They're just there.
Yeah.
They don't have to like dominate it's not all about them.
Absolutely. Then they're like Alizarin Crimson, I think, is the one that always has like the fun idea, but it's something that you want to do, you know?
Are we just like describing your middle school or high school life right now, Alex?
Yeah, I think that you can match those archetypes to a lot of colors that you're working with. I really think so.
Okay, so here's the question. Who is the person you went to like preschool with and they're like not really your cup of tea anymore, but you feel really bad being a jerk?
That's a great question.
I think that's yellow ochre.
I think I'd go with cobalt blue, actually.
See, I don't use cobalt blue, so I can't comment on that.
Cobalt blue is that one that's like, oh, you were so great. And then it's just like kind of, oh, we don't talk anymore.
Okay, who is like the mean girl, like from, you know, that movie with Lindsay Lohan?
Yes. I think for me, it would be phthalo green in like actually this background where it's like in small quantities. It's very important. It does in its own way tie everything together.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also a bit overwhelming and a little toxic.
So this is a great observation from Vishaka, who says, looking at the stream, I got a feeling it's more about the area around the eye that you focus on more than the eye itself. What's your take on that, Alex? Do you agree?
I love that phrasing. Because, yeah, I think that it's not about like thinking in your head, I will draw an eye. Because then as you're doing that, you're filling in blanks with things that aren't there. You're drawing what you want to be an eye, not what is an eye. Whereas if you just look at it more abstractly of just drawing shapes, that's exactly how you start to do it.
Well, and also, if you think about it, the eye isn't actually that interesting by itself. It's just the sphere, and it's wet, and it's squishy, and
yeah,
that's sort of it. Like, the eye is nowhere without the eye socket.
Mm-hmm. I thought you were just going to say eyes in general weren't visually appealing. And I'm like, no, take that back.
Oh, no, they're mesmerizing. I totally see.
What are you teaching these intrepid learners?
No, it's all about manipulation. Well, so I would recommend, if you have not watched my anatomy stream where I break down the anatomical structure of the eye. I recommend that stream because I feel that a lot of the reason why people struggle with the eye is because they're approaching it from a surface point of view. Like they're not really thinking about how cavernous the eye socket can be. And that's half the battle when you're painting
Great
an eye.
word choice. Yeah.
HT Pokepack says, I love the color gossip.
What color would you say, like that friend that you have like a small falling out with, and then you get back together and you forget why you were fighting?
That doesn't happen with me, Alex. I don't have friends like that. I remember if people screw me over.
I think for me, it's those like burnt sienna, raw umber, the classics, the ones that you need in every painting. And I'm always like, those are boring colors. And then I'm painting, I'm like, oh, this is actually very essential.
Well, okay. So do you do this thing when you sit down to paint where you're like, today I'm gonna embrace my gesture and I'm gonna push boundaries and and then you're just like doing your own same thing again?
Yeah, you feel like you're in a Kathy comic a little bit. You're like,
yes.
Today I'm going to be intrepid. Ack. Nope.
Nope.
Yeah.
Not today.
You're the same old you.
Although I will say it is different when I'm painting live on a stream because we're paying attention to so many other things that it is hard to do that as well.
Yeah. If I'm honest, I think it's something that I still feel like I'm getting used to. Like, it's that kind of thing where, it's that kind of thing. I feel like I go into phases of either, I don't know, it just kind of goes in and out where I catch myself forgetting that we're live. And that's when I know I'm really in a good groove.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Funmi Banjoko says, yellow. Sometimes I think it's ugly, but then I watch Fantastic Mr. Fox by Wes Anderson. If you haven't seen that film, for those of you. And then it's the only color I want to paint with. Yeah, isn't that amazing how, again, it's like certain media, we can have assumptions about certain colors or media, and then it's like we see somebody else use it, it just blows it out of the water.
Yeah, yellow, actually, I agree entirely with that post, where yellow is always, I push it in the background so often in my brain, and then it's like, oh, yellow can be such an incredible color.
I feel that way too about yellow. Like in general, I don't really like yellow that much. I know Lauren would be so mad if she heard that.
Oh, I mean, like the painting you're working on would be mad if they heard that,
Right.
Yeah, like yellow is like, I still get my mind blown every time I remember that brown is a yellow. It's mind-boggling.
Yeah, but you're like Naples yellow fangirl, so like, how can you?
Yeah, I'm finally starting to dive into it.
Yeah.
Whoop. Yeah, like mustard yellow. I love it.
Crap. I just like, you ever do this thing where you just like dunk your hand into your palette and now I have like watercolor all over my hands. Yuck.
I'm amazed I haven't done that yet. Like this stream, at least.
The best thing is when in art school people leave like blobs of paint and then you like sit on it.
Yep.
Zachary Ullman says, Indian yellow is my ride or die. I feel like I use it in every painting. You know what, Zachary? I love Indian yellow. It's so beautiful and transparent, and yet it's like, I don't know if I just haven't used it enough, but I haven't found as many uses as I thought I would have for a color that's that beautiful. So, Alex, there's been a request for a podcast of just your robot noises.
I wish it was easier to like record sound to set as your ringtone, because I would absolutely do that.
Oh my
Like,
God. That would be brilliant.
Have you seen, it's a South Korean a cappella group that recreates classic Apple computer sounds in a cappella?
No, I have not.
It is, y'all, after this stream, please Google it, because it is something else. It is so soothing. Like the classic sound of an iPhone ringing. It's incredible.
That's so weird.
Mm-hmm.
Mayahika is asking, Alex, when did you start using complementary colors as underpaintings?
Actually, I can tell you, if I looked up my class schedule, I could tell you the month, but it was in 2015. Yeah, I was taking an independent study with a professor working on diving deeper into watercolor before this same professor would help me get into gouache. And one of those, spent the whole semester on 1.5 paintings, which was a blast. And yeah, that's kind of how it started off. Mm-hmm.
Sheesh.
It was a lot, but it was fun.
What painting was that?
It ended up not working out. It was, I did it for a series I was doing on the Scarlet Letter.
Oh, was this in school?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if you would have seen this one or not.
I don't think I've seen it. But what do you mean by it didn't work out?
Oh, like it didn't stand the test of time.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't, for all the time, I learned so much by making that painting, but it was not one of those paintings where I'm like, yep, still good, you know?
So it's sitting in your closet of shame,
yeah,
for your
somewhere.
artwork?
I'm sure it's somewhere. A little bit. Hopefully a place not too humid, because it's a watercolor, but it's somewhere.
Marley is asking, do you like a color in one medium but not in another? Pink and acrylics, but not watercolor. That's a great question.
Mm-hmm. Yes, actually, I love pink and watercolor. Love it. And actually green. I love green in acrylics, but not watercolor.
That's so funny. Like, why is that? Like, I don't understand.
I've not thought about it until now, so I guess neither do I. It's really, I don't know. I think when I think of greens, I like thinking of them in this strange, almost toxic, nauseous green that you can really get with acrylic. Whereas in watercolor, they're a little softer. They're more subtle.
I guess I always like thinking about green in terms of skin tone. Like, I love that like olivey green color that you see in flesh.
Yeah.
That is just, that the
is
best thing. And then it's like, then your figures aren't just like peaches and browns, which is boring after a while.
Oopsies. I did not realize there was still blue on that brush. Oh, well.
Maria says, the pieces you love for their defects, quote, I love you for the mistakes I hope I'll never make again. Awesome.
Yeah.
Elizabeth is saying, as I was painting today, I wondered how paintings are graded in art classes. It's a great question. It's extremely difficult, and it varies tremendously from teacher to teacher. I mean, I had professors in art school who would grade by the project. Like, they would say, you got to be plus. I never did that. I found that really stressful, because I think as a teacher, my larger concern was a student's arc of progress. So for me, it was less about, oh, how did Alex do on this one? He bombed this one. He hit it at the park for this one. I didn't really care about that. I just wanted to know, like, how did you progress? Like, did you make a lot of progress? So the individual projects to me didn't matter that much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think cheers to that. I think that is such a good philosophy, not just that you had, but like teachers I know not in the art field bring into it of like,
Yeah.
it's all about that individual student's growth. It's not about their standardized test scores or what have you.
Well, and Alex, I would get kids at RISD who just would come in like rocking these amazing drawing skills. I mean, a lot of them could draw circles around me. But you know what? They weren't always really good students. In fact, a lot of the times they were the students who were the most frustrating because they just were so convinced that they had nothing to learn. And to me, they didn't do that well in class because they didn't want to try anything new. It was just like, yep, I'm all set.
It was just, like you just kind of coasting.
Well, but then I'm like, why are you even in school then? Like, if you've got it all figured out, like, there's no compelling reason for you to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Alex, I feel like my painting is so patchy. Do I need to like blend more, or should I just let it be? Or maybe bigger strokes?
Let it be. I like it.
You're not supposed to say that.
What's funny is there's that slight, ever so slight delay in the video. So right as I said, let it be, I like it, then you did a very big thing with the brush. Man, no matter how often I paint with acrylic, I'm still not used to the paints drying on the palette. Like with gouache, you never have
what's
to
the point of going to art school if you're not going to learn? Whoever is that student, can we trade places, please? I don't know. If I had an answer, it would definitely make things make a lot more sense. I mean, actually, I don't know which is a bigger bummer, Alex. People who actively don't want to learn or people who just like don't care. Like that really makes me mad when people are just so apathetic about their learning.
There's a great quote from Dune where it's saying like the character is always amazed that people found learning difficult, more so that people didn't realize that every moment is an opportunity for learning.
Yeah.
It's a cool way to look at it. Yeah, well, I don't know.
Learning is so fun. Like how can you not want to do it?
I think the thing as I'm getting older, I'm seeing more and more the problem of especially like professionals in their own field believing that they know what they're talking about, which granted is more defendable if you're older. Like, if you're 70 years, well, I don't know, if you're 70 years old and you think you're the expert in what you've been working on your whole life, understand.
Oh, okay.
But if you're 18 and you think you're the expert in it, that's a problem.
But see, I also do see people, Alex, who are professionals who really are not interested in learning new stuff.
Yeah, because you kind of settle in what you know. I think that's it. I think it's the same problem no matter the age. And it's something, I think it's a daily thing that we all have to undergo. I'm not sitting here saying like, oh, thank God I don't do that anymore. Because I do it all the time with things that I know, with bike riding, with making coffee, with painting. It's like you have to get back into that beginner's mindset with things.
Oh, and it's really hard work. I mean, when you're learning something new, it just feels so awkward. Like, okay, the worst learning experience I ever had was going snowboarding. Have you ever been snowboarding?
No.
So here's the thing. Like, okay, I'm not very good at skiing at all. I've only skied like once in my life. And yes, I know I have to start skiing now that I live in Utah. But like, at least with skiing, you can stand up, right? And snowboarding, you have this stupid board attached to your foot that you cannot take off. And you're totally not balanced. And the day that I was snowboarding, I'm not joking, I spent almost the entire day on my butt.
Yeah. That is, I one of those things, like, I could live and die and not snowboard or ski. I think it was like when people in Colorado was like, oh, do you want to learn how to snowboard and ski? I'm like, well, gee, I'll do anything once. They're essentially like, great, that'll be like several $100s to try it, and you might break a bone. I'm like, that's a really high risk gain. So I'm like, best case scenario, I'm out a rent check. Worst case scenario, I'm out a rent check and I have a broken bone. Like, I am okay without.
Vasily says, hey, Alex, how do you clean dried up paint from your palette? Oh, okay. You guys,
I'm so glad
I
you
am
asked this.
horrified by Alex's, quote, palette.
It's a shingle sheet of Bristol board.
Oh, barbarian.
Yeah. Well, because as I've said in our watercoloring gouache streams, like, those palettes, I can clean them anytime I want, and you can rehydrate the paint and reuse it. But acrylic, it gets so gloppy, and I'm just way too lazy to make a glass palette, not to mention clean it. So, yeah, I just kind of use a piece of paper. It works. It works pretty well.
See,
no
the
complaints.
thing is, Alex, I don't think about you as a lazy person. And yet, this is really impressive.
And yet.
Yeah, this is very impressive, Alex. Especially
you can learn a lot of lessons from water, just always looking for the least resistance. Let's see here. I had an idea of how I wanted this to look, and it's not there, but I'm kind of okay with how funky it's looking.
Sure. I mean, it's fine. I mean, there are some people, if some of you saw the YouTube comments that I posted on our Instagram story, oh boy, some of them are very entertaining, where people are like, your drawing doesn't look like the photo. You're a terrible artist. I'm like, all right.
Okay. That's why I don't read them, because I am very, very fragile.
Well, this is like one comment for every 50 nice ones that we get. So we don't get that many, but I mean, of course, there are people out there that take jokes.
Yeah.
That's inevitable.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's worth it because I love the nice comments so much. People are so kind and thoughtful and engaging that I'm like, okay, this is worth me reading the obnoxious comments.
That's understandable.
And I do think that for a place like YouTube, we do have a very safe, moderated space. I mean, if you look at some other channels, it's a little bit scary.
Yeah. Oh, that's what I want. There we go.
We had an earlier comment from Ashley Kim who says, Alex, can you focus your camera or is it not going through the stream well? I don't think Alex can do that now because I can't get into it, but it would involve him like leaving the stream and coming back, and that would take a while. So what we will do though is after the stream is Alex will post a photo of it in the Discord, and then you'll be able to see like every single detail. So sorry about that. I mean, that's just live streaming. It's just not the quality of video that you get in like our studio tutorials, which are edited.
Well, and this is something behind the scenes, we always, after every stream, kind of look at it and see like how we can do better and improve it next time. And something that I was going to wait to reveal to Clara at the end is that these acrylic brushes are much longer than the watercolor brushes I use. So more than once, I have bumped the camera with the end of my brush because I'm not used to it being this long.
Right.
So
I know there's so many like hazards.
yep.
Marley is asking, how would you individually differentiate between highbrow and lowbrow art? How would you define each?
That's a really, because I think I use those terms all the time, but always with like quotation marks around them. Like, I think that lowbrow would typically be, I think that's the kind of thing, like I use that term because of how it's used in the commonplace, but I don't think of it as a negative. Like lowbrow, kind of like how the original term for pulp, like pulp magazines or pulp comics, was like just trashy, like 5-cent cheesy comics about like, oh, a superhero saves the day, and it's just kind of pulpy and there's no substance behind it. But now I think like we see the art in those kind of pulp works. So in that same sense, like lowbrow, yeah, like I think that most of the time in the art world, this is a big sweeping statement, but I feel like things like, say, comic books, I think, are still struggling, or like concept art for films, or video games actually would be a good example of, I think, what most by and large in the art world would say is like maybe lowbrow, you know? Whereas, you know, like there are some video games, not just the concept art, but the game itself, that is a beautiful work of art in and of itself, that you kind of have to open up your mind to what art is to appreciate that, if that makes sense. Did that ramble make sense, Clara?
Hey, Alex, sorry, I'm having a little bit of tech stuff going on because my Bluetooth just turned off. So you can entertain them for a minute.
All right. Let's see. Entertain. Got it. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think that, and it's funny because I think that highbrow and lowbrow art, those terms have, I think, expired. Because now all the time you can open up the New Yorker, NPR, Wall Street Journal, Vanity Fair, and there's an article here and there about like, oh, the new independent video game that's actually a really good comment on, say, mental illness. And so I think the terms itself are starting to fade away, which I think overall is good, because that's a kind of left, right, right and wrong way of thinking about art that isn't a necessary part of the art world.
Okay, I'm back.
Hooray! Everyone sighs with relief.
Come on, you guys didn't miss me at all. You were all like being wooed by Alex's soothing NPR voice.
Well, no, speaking of NPR, did you ever listen to Car Talk?
Of course I listened to Car Talk.
I love it. I loved how they would always have letters that they'd read of people talking about how bad their show was. And it was all a joke. Like the letters, you know, they were written by fans. But it was like, yeah, your show is so terrible. Like, you know, go on and on and on about it. Like my dentist would have your show playing in the dentist office so that people would think that a root canal wasn't that bad.
Oh my God, occasionally. All right, so you guys all know I have a mega crush on Ari Shapiro, who's one of the hosts of NPR's All Things Considered. He's so cute and smart and witty. I just love him. And he's also adorable. So anyway, he occasionally will post like email from NPR listeners, and it's hilarious because it's oftentimes like super passive aggressive, but also very well researched and like intelligently written, but also like really rude and obnoxious. It's this very particular mix of rudeness that's so specific to NPR. I don't know how to describe it.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. That that kind of like backdoor insult kind of thing.
Like there was this one he posted on Instagram the other day. It was something like this listener was so angry that Ari Shapiro used the word issues. And that's such a lazy use of that word. And I'm a doctor and I have never used the word issues before. Here are 5 other options you could have used that would have been less offensive. It's like, oh my God, you don't have anything better to do?
Yeah, it's like, I'm a doctor, narrator. They were not a doctor.
We have a comment here from Emily who says, I think that lowbrow art can become highbrow art if it has a strong cultural impact, such as The Watchmen or the comics completed by Alison Bechdel. Those pages have been blown up and shown in galleries. I mean, my feeling on lowbrow and highbrow art is, first of all, this is my opinion. Who cares? It is what it is. Like, why do we have to categorize it? But also, I do think you're right, Emily, that there is this category of, quote, it's so bad, it's good. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like Watchmen, I think, was a very good example, which for a lot of people, like, put, like, whoa, like, comics can be a high art form that's talking about, like, the military-industrial complex and world peace and everything. And it's still, quote unquote, just a superhero comic. Yeah, I totally get that.
Although it's very funny, somebody asked Kat, because we were doing that stream on the comics curriculum, and somebody said in the chat, they were like, oh, well, what's the difference between a comic and a graphic novel? And Kat was basically people use graphic novel because they feel that comics, that term is too lowbrow for them, and to make it be able for them to speak about it as a higher art form, they have to call it a graphic novel.
I absolutely believe that. Yeah. And Kat's not the only one who said that. Casey Roonan would also have that idea of like that the word comic shouldn't be a bad word. Like it is a comic and it's okay to call it such.
Oh, I know. I mean, I feel bad for people for whom that's become an issue. Like Casey told me that he had people who were like saying really dumb stuff to him, like, well, you've done enough comics, you've conquered that. Why don't you go and do something else? It's like, I don't think that's really how it works.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, this is my thing, dude. Like, this is like my, for lack of a better phrase, calling, you know? Like, yeah, this is what gets me going. This is my vibe. Let's see. Yeah. Wow. Again, this is
a comment here from Ocean who says, how do you battle the feelings of helplessness and feelings that you're no good at art? How do you push through that if you have any advice?
I'll start with a moment of brevity where, as we were talking about comics in the film, The Avengers, when the Hulk is like, that's the secret, Cap. I'm always angry. And then he turns into the Hulk. I kind of feel that with art. Like, that's the secret. You're never okay with it. Like, you'll always doubt yourself and you'll always think you're not good enough. The trick is to kind of just not let that feeling dominate you. It's, honestly, like a good visual for me that like honestly therapy has really helped me to find is you picture like a helium balloon and you just kind of poke it up to the ceiling. You don't force it away. You don't try to get rid of it. But when you notice it overpowering, you just kind of poke it and just picture it drifting up. And you know it's going to come back. You know it's not gone forever. But when it comes back, you know you just have to poke it again. Just acknowledge it, give it its space, and then send it on its way.
I would definitely agree with that. It's like, it's just something you live with. It doesn't go away, and it's more that you deal with strategies for how to cope with it. I would say for me, one coping strategy is I stop looking at other artists, to be honest. I mean, I'm not saying don't look at artists, because you should. And it's a hugely important part as an artist to be seeing what other people are doing. But sometimes it's toxic. Like sometimes you do the work and you just go, oh my God, I suck. I mean, that's the immediate reaction when you look at good stuff off, especially when it like looks a lot like yours. You ever have that, Alex, where like somebody's work is like very similar and you're like, they're doing what I'm doing, but way better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why that thing too of like no win, sometimes it's best to not look at other artists. Like honestly, like it's helpful painting by painting, like be like, is the sketch phase, like for me the sketch phase is a great phase to look at other artists. But when I'm like just starting a painting and it's still in that ugly duckling phase, that's a terrible time for me to look at other artists, because then I'm comparing everything to mine. So those, now that I know that about myself, when I'm halfway through a painting, that's when I kind of don't look around Instagram or look at other artists for a minute.
Yeah, you have to take breaks, because I think that sometimes you do have to live in a vacuum as an artist and just be totally by yourself when you're making the work.
Yeah, it's about like finding that balance. I think thinking about the time pre the connection of the internet is helpful for that. Like artists would meet up in the artist salons, or they would go to image galleries, or they would hang out at their own galleries. But then they would have their private studios that they would go to and work, where they would be unbothered by the world outside. And I think that's a good strategy to replicate, of like intentionally going out and following other artists on Instagram and looking at what they're doing and being inspired by them, but then also knowing when to turn it off, log out, and work on your own work. And again, it's a very tricky balance that if you figure out how to work that stride, like know that that's a very unique thing for you. I don't think it's something that there's a formula. You just have to listen to your own mind as you're working.
This is a comment from Anna, who says, I go through a phase in every painting where I absolutely hate it, want to chuck it out the window. That's basically a requirement. I think that if you don't go through that, something is very, I don't know, maybe you just got really lucky.
Yeah, I go through that. Like, I don't know if it's accurate or not. I jokingly always call it like when I'm 2/3 of the way through. I get that real bad.
I mean, Alex, I do think a big part of pushing through all of those things is just staying with the piece, because I do see that a lot of students who I'd work with, a lot of them would quit way too early. And I'm like, listen, sometimes there are times when, it's just you're beating a dead horse. But sometimes it's like you just got to be a little more patient with yourself, because 1 hour can sometimes make or break how a piece comes out.
Yeah, and I think those, for my student years, I think of those as the most formative times of learning, when you think it's a doomed effort and then you put in some extra time. And even if, guess what, it's still bad, like it's bad in a different way. Like, yeah, like that's to me the most active times of learning as an artist, is when you take something from bad and make it better. Like, because you don't learn by just executing what you know how to do.
So I went to this lecture with Sarah Z, and I really liked the way that she framed how to think about mistakes. She basically said, well, listen, mistakes are fine to make, but just make sure that you're always making new mistakes. Don't just repeat the same mistake over and over again, like really have an awareness of what your mistakes are and make new ones. And I loved that. It just felt very much like even when you're making mistakes, you're still making progress.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Like, yeah, just be like, it's okay. It's a different mistake. Oh yeah, it's palette knife time, and I hardly ever have palette knife time. That's why.
I really regret even trying to do the eyebrow. That was a big mistake. We have a question here from Marley who says, does having more experience with making art make it easier to become more patient when everything is going wrong? I think it does, because once you log more experience and you have had pieces that, whoa, did get better after you worked on them for a little bit longer, you have like concrete evidence that, oh yes, it can work out. Whereas let's say you have very little experience and you have not had that thing where like, whoa, it worked out. It's like you don't believe it. You don't believe that it can work out. What about you, Alex?
Yeah. You said it perfectly. Yeah, like you just know every time your painting is in that bad stage where it's like, oh, well, this is terrible. You're like, okay, well, that's what I said last time, and the time before that, and the time before that, and they've all turned out okay. So yeah, just keep at it, and that's when you know that you're learning, is when you start to recognize how you emotionally feel with the pieces as well.
We have a comment here from Adam who says, I find that consuming the art of other artists with intention rather than mindlessly scrolling helps with the negative comparison monsters that tend to haunt me, especially when I'm in my process. That's such a good way to think about it, because a lot of us are on social media just scrolling and scrolling, and we're not really thinking, oh, why am I looking at this? Whereas I know I was looking a lot at Messerschmitt's character head sculptures, and that was really intentional because I was studying the way he was doing facial expressions in order to inform the work I was doing at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a really astute way to look at it. Like, just be aware. Like, and kind of like that Dune quote about how to learn. It's like every single instance can be an opportunity for learning, but you just have to be honest with yourself of like, okay, is this me learning, or is this me just scrolling through it?
And we have a question here from Lisa who says, how did you choose which aspect to emphasize or deviate from reference?
I think for this one, since I'm in such a sketch frame of mind, I'm being very loose and open to where it goes. Because yeah, like when I was planning this, I was like, oh yeah, I'm definitely going to make like the eyelids the big important part, but I'm having a lot of fun with these cheekbone areas. So I think that this is the kind of attitude I wish I could carry or be better at carrying into my other pieces, of letting it go with the flow a little bit. Like kind of learning from it as I'm painting it.
For me, Lisa, to be honest, I just look at the parts I like and I emphasize them more. I'm like, that patch of skin's kind of boring. I don't need to spend that much time on it.
Let's see. There's a couple areas in here that are not quite what I want. So let's see if we can tweak those up a notch. Doop, 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 doop.
So this is some good advice from Ave Ree, who says, remove the adjective, quote, good, bad in your mind. Just take regular breaks. Keep going at your own pace. The end of all your efforts is your progress, not necessarily quality of what you produce now. Yes, and it's up and down. I mean, when you make work, it does not get better. That's just not the way it is. It's a up and down roller coaster ride that is very much out of your control. Bicycle Lady says, love your eye painting. Are you using gouache? I am not. I would never paint with gouache live with Alex next to me because, ooh, that would not be good for my ego. So if I ever paint gouache, it's not going to be when Alex is around. And I'm going to give a shout out to Marley. Thank you so much for the super sticker. We greatly appreciate your support. It's incredibly helpful to us keeping Art Prof up and running. Everybody, we would love for you to join us in the Art Prof Discord. Alex and I will be hanging out in the Art Alongs channel immediately after the stream. The Discord invite link, it's in the YouTube video description below. Subscribe to our channel so you can continue to grow and develop as an artist. And I want to give a big thank you to our top Patreon supporters. All of you are so incredibly important to us in terms of keeping Art Prof 100% free and accessible to everybody. Everybody here, thank you so much for your contributions, your comments, and questions. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.